The HNC has met in London and Sarah Morice was attending that meeting and she joins us now live. Sarah, we heard that the roadmap there is being described as a dynamic document. What exactly have the HNC proposed?
Well, broadly speaking, the main point they wanted to get across is that a future in Syria means no Bashar al-Assad. Now, of course, this is not new. This is something they have been saying for a very long time. And, of course, has been the major sticking point in the now really failed UN peace talks. But broadly speaking, this vision that they presented today comes in 3 phases. And that first phase is a negotiation process. This is where they will need to sit down with a lot of interested parties and negotiate what a future Syria transitional government could look like. Now, in this time, they want to be able to have a total cessation of hostilities. They want all the fighting to stop, and they want those who've been displaced or made refugees able to return to Syria. Now, that should last around 6 months, they say, this first phase. The second phase then kicks in, and that would be the transitional phase, and that is when a transitional government would come into place and they would try and draw up a constitution going forward for Syria. Now, in this time, that is when the HNC says Bashar al-Assad must be gone. He must have no role in this transitional government. And then once they've drawn up a draft constitution, well, then the next phase can start, and that would be implementing that constitution. It would be replacing that temporary government with one that is democratically elected, and those democratic elections must be overseen by the UN. Now, all through this process, the HNC has been stressing that they want to make sure it's a fair Syria for everyone. So regardless of race, religion or gender, every Syrian would be welcome and would be involved, and that liberty, the quality of liberty would be very much upheld in this new Syria. But of course, there is a major problem with this plan, and that is that they can't even get to this first phase because, of course, the peace talks have fallen over. Now, some have asked the HNC, well, what can you do about that? Because it's the HNC that's refusing to come to the negotiation table and has been since April. I put it to a member of the HNC just a few moments ago and said to her, you know, if you're not willing to come to the table, then how can we go forward? And she said she would come to the table. They are willing to come to the table if the regime would stop their hostilities. Now, here's what she had to say.
We are committed to negotiations. We are committed to a political solutions. We are very committed, but it's not us. It is the regime who keep killing the Syrian civilians, keep starving the Syrian people. He's using chemical weapons, chlorines. So it's not us, it is him. We are committed to a political solution.
Well, Sarah, the HNC themselves are facing criticism, aren't they? Some people saying that it would effectively replace one dictatorship with another. How have they responded to that criticism?
Yeah, certainly there is that criticism, and one of the reasons it's arisen is because in that transitional government phase, the vision that they've put out says that the transitional government will have full executive powers and would also have judicial powers. And of course, people saying, well, that is just replacing one dictatorship with another. The HNC has today said that's absolutely not true, and the difference here is that the Syrian people would be very involved in negotiating the framework for that transitional government and then negotiating the draft constitution that would eventually be the constitution. And they also say the people that they include in their transitional government would come from all walks of life in Syria. So there may be, in fact, some people who've worked for the regime. Perhaps they weren't the leaders of the regime, because certainly the HNC says they must have no role, but perhaps junior ministers or people who didn't perhaps have a huge say in what was going on in the regime, they would still have a role in this transitional government, as would, of course, opposition parties, as would regular Syrian people. So this is how they say it will be very different to the dictatorship they say is now in Syria.
OK, Sarah, thank you very much.